So despite the fact that school is in full swing and our schedules are as packed as ever, my boys have been reading maniacs lately. Here is a brief overview of what they have been reading and a few things that I've been reading as well. If you're new here, I'm Rian, a Christ-following wife and a homeschool mom to 3 boys. Here we talk all things homeschool, and we will learn together how to use our roles as wife, mom, teacher, and homemaker in order to glorify God. So it has been a busy season for us. And I thought maybe after the move and COVID and all the stuff, things would slow down, but they didn't. So as always, I wish I was reading more than I am, but I am reading a little bit here and there, but my kids are reading like crazy. They're reading when they first get up in the morning before school. They're reading before bed. They're reading in the car. Like, you can't stop these kids. So they have quite a few books to share. I have a couple to share myself, but it's more just like little 5-minute snippets here and there that I'm getting. So my list is not what I want it to be, but what's new, right? So I'm gonna start off with my 5th grader, Jude. He is 10 years old, and I mentioned last month he has started these Red Rock Mysteries, and these are Christian mysteries, and he is still really loving them. He's read 2 or 3 of these this month. I don't even keep track of which ones he's read anymore. He just brings home new ones from the library each time we go. One book that I actually found for him that he loved reading, and it's really heavy, is this Star Wars, the Skywalker saga, written by Delilah Dawson. And this is, you know, the whole story of the Skywalker family, but it's full of pictures. So it's not just like a novel, but it's not like a comic either, really. I mean, there's like good sections of reading through here. But the pictures are really nice in here, and he just devoured this. And he and my younger son, my 3rd grader, discussed it a lot. And much to my chagrin, my husband is converting them into Star Wars nerds. So I'm just kind of running with it and letting it happen. Now, something they've both been into, and they've been into these for a while, but they kind of broke from them for a while, and now they're like really obsessed with them again, is the You Wouldn't Want to Be books. And they're scholastic books by, I don't know if they're all by Jacqueline Morley, but this one is You Wouldn't Want to Live in a Medieval Castle. And so I checked these books out the first time when we were doing Story of the World. Just as we would get to certain time periods, we would check out one of these, and they just love them, which they are kind of funny. You know, the little dialogue that they have in here is funny, but they're factual, and I'm okay with them reading them. They have 3 of them checked out right now, and they're both enjoying them. For Sunlight, he read through Mustang, Wild Spirit of the West by Marguerite Henry, which of course she's the one who wrote the Misty of Chincoteague book, which he read earlier this year. And he didn't love this one as much as he loved Misty of Chincoteague, but he enjoyed it. It's about a lady who is fighting for the wild Mustangs and saying that they should be able to roam free, and she has to like end up going to a senator or something. I don't know, but he said it was pretty good. And then this is his current Sunlight read, The Toothpaste Millionaire by Merrill, and he is liking it so far. And it's about a boy who thinks toothpaste is too expensive, and so he's found a way to make his own for a lot cheaper, and he's going to become a millionaire off of it, supposedly. We'll see how it ends. So that is just a snippet of what he has read this month. Like I said, I just can't keep up with what all they're reading, but I know those are some of the highlights of what he is reading this month. Now on to my 3rd grader. Again, he just turned 8, so he's a very, very young 3rd grader. But he's reading on about a 3rd grade level anyway. He is super into nonfiction. Both of my older boys are, but he seems especially so. So he is always checking out nonfiction books from the library, whether that be about cars. This week it was Jaguars, or Jaguars for you car people. Maybe that's the right way to say it. He's been talking about, or reading about the Titanic. He actually has one of the You Would Not Want to books about the Titanic. You would not want to be a passenger on the Titanic or something like that. So he's obsessed with stuff like this. He's also been into weather for a long time. So this is Surviving the Storm. about Hurricane Katrina. And then he just randomly picks all these nonfiction books. This one I thought was really interesting, the Tuskegee Airmen. And this is the first African-American flight unit in the US military. And so, I don't know, he's super into all this stuff, which great. I used to kind of get annoyed that he wasn't reading more chapter books, but if you're reading all this nonfiction, I'm like, great, keep it up. Another thing, both my boys recently discovered, my 5th grader actually checked this out, but now my 3rd grader is about halfway through it, are these history comics. This one's by Andy Hirsch. It is The American Bison, the Buffalo's Survival Tale. So talking about the bison out on the prairie. And so, I mean, they are full-on comics, but there's lots of good nonfiction information in here. So, they're reading them quickly, but I feel like they're still getting a lot out of it. And then for his Sunlight, I think there's a couple that I haven't mentioned recently, but his last 3 have been The Fire Cat by Esther Avril, which is this kind of an old classic. Somehow I've never read it, but my husband was like, that was my favorite book when I was his age. So apparently it's a good one. And then The Sword and the Tree, just kind of a medieval tale by Clyde Robert Bula, or Bulla? I don't know. And then he just finished up today Wagon Wheels by Barbara Brenner. This is about a father and his sons going out on the prairie for free land and their struggles there. And he really liked that one a lot. Again, I think because it had more of that nonfiction feel to it about the struggles on the prairie and fighting off rattlesnakes and all that adventuresome type stuff. And Jonas also read one chapter book this month, which was the Bailey School Kids Skeletons Don't Play Tubas, and that's by Debbie Dady. But I loved the Bailey School Kids books when I was a kid, and so he really likes Scooby-Doo, and so I'm like, ooh, maybe he'll like this like mystery kind of cheeky, creepy style book. And I don't think he disliked it. He finished it, but he wasn't like eager for the next one. So maybe it wasn't a hit after all. And now for my preschooler, he is 3.5. His favorite books this month have been Superhero ABCs by Bob Mccloud. And this one is kind of fun, I'm not gonna lie. So they come up with all of these fictitious superheroes. I mean, I guess they're all fictitious, right? Anyway, and they make one for each letter of the alphabet. And so here we have Skyboy Soars through the sky after school. And so they do all the alliteration with all the S's, which is really good for a preschooler who's learning his letter sounds. He walks around saying, Mom, I made an He was walking in the at my son's football practice last night in the gravel, tracing his feet into an M. And he's like, I made an So you have like Goo Girl and Huge Man. And anyway, this was a fun book. Another one that's really fun that actually all 3 of my kids loved when I read it aloud one evening is And the Robot Went. This is by Michelle Robinson. And so this has a lot of rhyming. So you kind of get that Dr. Seuss feel to it, but there's also a lot of opportunity for voices and for sounds. Ooh, tippa tippa zap, click, bang, boo. And so we had to have like accents and, all the silly stuff, but it's a really fun book to listen to. And for our read alouds, we have kind of put The Little Princess on the back burner for no other reason other than our evenings have suddenly gotten so busy. We have football practice twice a week, we have football games, we have church starting back up on Wednesday nights, and so it's just our evening reading time has been cut short, which kind of makes me sad, but we will eventually get back to this. One of our Sunlight read alouds this month that we finished up was Understood Betsy by Dorothy Canfield Fisher, and we loved this one. For whatever reason, all of us agreed that this is one of our favorite ones of this year for Sunlight, and none of us could really place our finger on why. It just kind of had an Anne of Green Gables, very charming feel to it, and I'm a huge Anne fan, so I appreciated that, but I wasn't sure my boys would, but they all agreed. They're like, no, this was one of the best ones this year, and I'm like, okay. So Anne had to go live with her extended family while the family she was living with was dealing with sickness. And it was a totally different lifestyle for her, and she thought she would hate it, but she ended up loving it. And I don't know, it was just a very sweet story. And then for our history section this month in Sunlight, we read one of the Christian Heroes Then and Now books. And we read about George Mueller, the guardian of Bristol's orphans. And this was a super, super good book. My boys loved it. Just, it's so special to get to see how many orphans George Mueller and his family impacted by just being obedient to God, and how in times of doubt, God never let them down and he always supplied for them. You know, we're hungry, we don't have any more money or food. What are we gonna do? He sets the table as if they have food, they pray, and lo and behold, the milk truck breaks down outside their door. And the baker comes in and said, in the middle of the night, I feel like I needed to bake this bread for you. Here you go. And I don't know, just a story of faith and obedience, and such an amazing testimony. And then we just started for our history section, Catching Their Talk in a Box, which is another missionary story, a life story of missions by Betty M. Hockett. And we haven't gotten very far into this, but Joy Ritterhoff, I think is her last name, wanted to be a missionary to Africa, and God kind of, in a roundabout way, brings her into the mission field, but we haven't gotten super far into it. But again, it's another sweet story of just listening to the Lord and obeying when he calls. And then at night, they've still been listening to audiobooks. They've listened to a few more of the Boxcar Children books, which they always love them. And then they have also been listening to the Black Stallion series. I think they're almost done with the second book in that series, and they both really like that one too. Of course, it's kind of a classic, one that I never got into. I don't know, I'm not like a horse person or anything like that, but both my boys find it really intriguing. And now for what I have been reading this past month. Again, it's never as much as I want to, but that's just life right now. I listened to a book called Leave the World Behind by Rumaan Alam, I think is how you say his name. And this book really made me mad. So I was really invested. Like, I liked the storyline behind it. And it was a little different than the typical murder mystery type stuff that I always listen to. And I like that. I like psychological thrillers, stuff like that. It wasn't really any of those. It was almost kind of like an end of the world type thing, but in a more subtle way. You didn't know like which way it was gonna go. And it was a little more vulgar than what I like, so I wasn't that thrilled with that, but the story was really strong and good. And then you get to the end and you're like, oh, there's gonna be some sort of resolution. And there wasn't. It just like stopped. It was just like someone decided, oh, here's the end, and stopped writing. I'm not one that says that every book has to have like a happy ending, but every book has to have an ending. Like, you can't just stop writing. And that's kind of what I feel this book did. So read at your own risk. Another one I listened to on audio was The Secret Thoughts of an Unlikely Convert by Rosaria Butterfield. This is the second book I've read of hers, and it was super, super good. It tells about her story of coming to faith in Christ and how she was, you know, a liberal lesbian college professor who was very progressive in her beliefs, and how the Lord just used the faithful love of a pastor to bring her the gospel. He didn't do anything big and huge. He was just faithful and consistent in her life and loved her. And it was just like a huge, huge encouragement to me to, you know, reach out to those around you, no matter what kind of lives they live, and reach out to them with love, also truth, and, you know, preach the gospel unashamed and give them truth when they need it, even if it's ugly, you know, because it confronts them, but love them, eat with them, invite them in your home. And I don't know, it was just very, very eye-opening and encouraging and convicting, and I definitely recommend it. And then I am still, like I said, bite-sized plugging along by what standard. This has been a couple months going, I know, but you cannot read a whole lot at once because it's like drinking from a fire hose. And so this is just all about what is God's standard? How do we apply it to how we view the world? A lot of times we just think about the government and think about laws and think about all different things in the world and the way they are through just kind of how the world is, that kind of lens. But really we need to think about it as God's world, God's rules. And so his word applies to everything in life. It's not two separate things. And it's good, but it's just like, you gotta like read a paragraph and then sit and chew on it, and then read a paragraph and sit and chew on it. It's a lot, but it's really good. And then as a pre-read, I'm just checking this out for my 5th grader to see if it's something I want to hand to him or not. But this is The War That Saved My Life. It was actually recommended to me by, I believe, Megan over at Pennies and Salt. And this is by Kimberly Brubaker Bradley. And it's about a girl in World War II who has a deformity. And I don't really know much more than that because I'm not very far into it. But so far, it's very heart-wrenching and good. I think my 5th grader might be mature enough for it. I don't know. I'll let you know at the end. But it's so far a really, really intriguing story. I'm also pre-listening. I guess it's not technically pre-reading a few other books for my 5th grader that I won't mention here, but there is a lot of pre-reading going on around here. And the last book I want to share with you that I am just starting is The Family-Driven Faith by Vodi Bakum Jr. And it's doing what it takes to raise sons and daughters who walk with God. And I've heard this is very convicting and very good, and that there's a lot of good application in it. And I know I'm going to love it because anything that Vodi puts out, it's like you're being punched and hugged at the same time. It's kind of weird. But he's like, just like shouting truth at you. But at the same time, you know he's doing it because he wants you to see God's word for what it is. And so I know I'll be convicted in this book, but I also know that I'll be given instruction on how to better handle my family. And I am super excited for this. Hopefully I can get through it a lot faster than by what standard, but we'll see. So although I say it every month, maybe next month I'll read more, but until then, I guess we'll just wait and see if we can read more at maternity leave. That might be good. I don't know. I'm not placing my bets on any of that, but that is what we are reading this month. Let me know down below what you are currently reading, or maybe what your kiddos are reading. And be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. My next video is a day in the life, all about my morning routine. So I'm gonna walk with you from the time I wake up until about lunchtime, and you can see what we do with our day. So I thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.